Okay, ladies and gentlemen, let's begin. Thank you so much for coming. It's good to see you. I will say, I do see a little bit of wear and tear, a little bit of fatigue on your faces, and I can't imagine why. Yeah, it's getting to that time in the semester, right? This isn't the only exam I'm sure you have. What exams do you have coming up? What do you got?
376.
376?
For the final coming up.
You know, that was one of my luckiest ever instances in my life. So I took 376. Midterm and final was a 20-question, multiple choice only exam. Okay, right? All right. By the way, that's really easy to grade, okay? How you design your exam actually matters. You don't just need to think about the student experience. You have to think about the grading experience, and that's something I learned this weekend, okay? That was brutal. But on 376 exam, I recall, like on both exams, I got about 10 or 11 of the questions to where I know how to solve this. I know exactly what the answer is. On like around 7, maybe to 9 questions I had to guess on completely. In both exams, I got every single one. Every single one. I think I A+'d both of those exams. Ended up with an A+ in a course that I felt okay-ish about, right? But anyway, that's my 376 story. Everyone should know that we do have your exams up here. The way that this exam is graded, I've been told, is extremely classic style. So we do not have the capability to scan these exams in. We don't have a way to digitize them. I do believe there are machines on campus, but I don't have access to them. I don't know where they are, how they work. And so it was me and a bunch of red ink over the weekend, okay? And you can get your copy here in person, and you can get a feel for what went wrong, what went right. Just know that it's not actually red ink. This is Michigan, so we do blue ink. Yeah, the average, the statistics were pretty good, generally. I think the class overall did a very good job. It was pretty clear that the class, like you all kind of know your stuff, okay? This was not the world's hardest exam, but it wasn't easy. In fact, a lot of people in the feedback said it was pretty satisfying. Some even said fun, which is a strange word to associate with an exam. But a lot of people said it was also very long. It was a fairly lengthy exam that left people fairly tired at the end of it. I think part of that is that we were going from like, what was it again? Was it 5 to 9? Yeah. That's kind of a late period for an exam. Not super late, but not early. Yeah, it was really interesting to design. Grading it was also interesting. Okay, so this is actually a bonus exam question. We'll see if you get it. How do you grade an exam like this? Do you grab the first exam in the pile and you grade it all the way through every question? Or do you grab the first exam, grade the first section, then grab the next exam, grade that section, okay, so that all the sections are contiguous? And that's a hint. What do you do? Yeah. Yes, and why? Yes, exactly, right? You do not want to be doing the big, expensive context switch where I'm grading one exam, and so I grade the first open response question, so I have to remember how that one goes. Then I have to do the second open response question. I have to remember how that one goes. And because I focused on the second question, I forgot the first question. No, like the way that you do it is with data-oriented programming, which means you're going to take care of all of the Lua questions in a row. And then you'll go back through all the exams and you'll take care of all the C++ questions in a row. And that is dramatically faster, okay? Anyway, you start to see patterns much more easily. It speeds up your grading. It helps you quickly detect errors. You know what's the hardest thing, though? Can you take a guess? The hardest situation for grading an exam like this, and maybe you'll become a teacher one day and you'll get a feel for this, maybe you won't, and maybe you'll enjoy this when I say it. there were a few pretty clear, obvious solutions to some of these problems. Now, they're not obvious, but they're very popular solutions. And they're the solutions we thought that you would go with. But on occasion, a student skipped that solution, decided to write 3 extra pages of logic. The train is flying off the rails. It's in midair. But I can't just mark it as wrong, can I? Because that train may very well land perfectly back on the tracks, okay? And it might be crazy, but it also might be correct, technically. And those are the worst because you have to simulate those in your head. It takes forever to do so. Whereas if someone just does the common solution, you're like, boom, 10 seconds, yep, they got everything they need, boom, done, okay? So I hope you eventually have that experience at least once in your life so you can be on the other side of that exam, okay? All right, so look at where we are. This is I think a pretty festive time in the course. The autograders are off. What does that mean? Well, it actually doesn't mean that they're off. Not technically. What it does mean is that they're not going to be handing out any more points this semester, okay? In a sense, that makes them off. They might as well be. But we are leaving them on. At least the Linux one is actually getting turned off because that continues to cost us lots of money as we run it. So that one's going off. But if you want to, keep verifying your engine against those old test cases, you can do that. What I will tell you, though, is that if an autograder goes down, you can notify me, and I'm going to say, oh, that's tough. That's a shame. And maybe I'll get to it on the weekend, okay? It is no longer considered essential to keep those autograders running, and so keep that in mind, all right? Anyway, the reason that we do this is that we really do need you to move on. We need you to move on and forget about standardizing your engine, and we need to start thinking about how to make those engines unique, right? Make them special. What's your secret sauce going to be? When you talk to Stardock, when you talk to whatever big AAA C++ heavy game dev company you're thinking about, okay? Why is your engine special? When they say, oh, that's just like a course project, right? You're going to go, no, it's not a standardized A2 engine course project. This is my special engine, okay? I did some really cool, unique stuff that no one else did, and that's what you got to focus on, okay? I'll tell you, in the early days of 494, Rayanne and all the team at Stardock, they were like, oh, wow, you made a Metroid? That's great. You made Zelda? That's great. And then years and years go by, hundreds of students all making Zelda and Metroid. They get bored, okay? It's all the same. Keep that in mind, okay? And that's going to become, you're kind of lucky you did this first, so your engines will be awesome and unique, but the people who come behind you are going to have a rougher time, okay? I'll tell you that. In a couple of years, Stardock's going to be like, oh, you just made a C++ game engine with Lua hosting? That's cool, I guess, right? Anyway, so keep that in mind. You're a special group, okay? And I really appreciate that. We have a game engine for you. This one might be a little bit surprising, okay? This might be described as a little bit more of a framework, okay? But if you engage with this idea, with this IP, you'll find games emerging from it, okay? This is Dungeons & Dragons. Has anyone played it? Okay? I feel like I'm not a very good nerd when I say this, but I've never actually played Dungeons & Dragons, okay? I've never really had the time, I suppose. Whenever I think about playing tabletop games or board games, I immediately start wondering, why isn't this automated? Could I automate this, right? I don't want to shuffle the cards. Could I just, make the software do it? And then pretty soon I'm playing a video game, okay? So I tend to not play and indulge with as many tabletop and card games as maybe I should as a game designer. But Dungeons & Dragons, an instantly recognizable name. This has been around since 1974. Before any software game engines were really much of a thing. It was made by Gary Gygax and Dave Arneson. It's now kind of shepherded and evolved by Wizards of the Coast, that's got to be a California company, right? They better be on which coast are they on?
They're on the Pacific. They're in Seattle.
Okay, got you. That makes sense. And that company was bought by Hasbro. So Dungeons & Dragons is now a pretty mass market thing, all right? This is famous for kind of establishing and really supporting and empowering the RPG genre. And that very much is an influence on the realm of games. Early titles in that genre, a lot of the early PC titles, and even some early console titles. The JRPG genre, Final Fantasy owes a lot to Dungeons & Dragons. Especially you can see it in its earliest games. D&D was also kind of an emblem of nerd culture, right? It was always there if you wanted to portray, like, oh, these people are kind of nerdy in movies and films. Put them around a table, have them start talking about dungeons and the dragons in them, and you kind of get that effect, okay? It was a little bit more pronounced in older media. These days, if someone plays D&D, that just kind of like doesn't tell you all that much, actually, right? It's very popular. Lots of people indulge, and it just had a big film. Unfortunately, this film did not do very well at the box office, but apparently it did pretty well critically and was pretty well received. A lot of people really enjoy this film. But it goes to show this is kind of a mass market thing now, okay? And of course, Lord of the Rings comes out, and oh my goodness, a lot of these ideas are kind of being spread a little bit more. Lots of fantasy games, lots of fantasy properties getting big, and pretty much it's not so much a nerd thing anymore. It's just a cool thing. It's a human thing. I think that's often how it goes. Anyway, I know very little about Dungeons & Dragons. I've never actually played it, so you might have to help me here. But it's pretty interesting. It's played around a tabletop often. It's a tabletop game. A lot of people sit around together. At Electronic Arts, I actually did sit in on a few D&D sessions. I didn't really participate very much. But the game designers in there, like, they had a projector, and they would put on some backgrounds to kind of give you a hint as to where your characters were at. And they would even play music and ambiance. Okay, we're outside, so now we're playing a freesound.org outside track that kind of sounds like horses are going by. Oh, wow, right? It's immersive. And it can get as involved as you want. The players are required to create a character, and they're required to kind of make decisions, and often they make it as a team. The party has to decide whether they're going to enter the dungeon or head to the town to prepare first. Now, what's really interesting to me is that one player in this Dungeons & Dragons session is known as the DM, the Dungeon Master. This is a player who's basically the game designer, the game developer. Except whereas us as game devs, right, we prescribe and we etch in stone the rules to our experience way ahead of time. Okay, if the player goes to this part of the map, this thing is going to happen to them, right? Dungeons & Dragons has the game designer embedded into the play session right next to the players. And that allows them to react dynamically. Okay, the game designer, the dungeon master, might plan out an amazing epic adventure that happens inside this very special dungeon. But then, oops, the party has decided they want to go the other direction. Oh goodness, we're not going to be able to use that material, are we? Oh no, okay, can we repurpose some of it? Because they decided to go into not the local dungeon, but the local ice castle, which I guess is kind of a dungeon, isn't it? Can we reuse anything? Can we fix things up? So a lot of people will say, if you want to get better as a game designer, go try and be a DM. Go figure out what makes people interested in something. Go find out and get a practice in quickly creating new interesting decisions. What makes a decision interesting versus one that is a little bit more tough? What happens if all of your players wipe? As in, like, the entire party was annihilated. Are you going to fudge the rules like many software game designers do to try and give them a better chance at winning? Are you going to do something really kind of contrived to get them back into it? Okay? Like say, oh, that was just a vision of the future, right? So you actually didn't lose that fight, okay? Now you get to make different decisions. Or one that I read about last night was a really clever one where, oh, the party's been wiped, but they're actually not dead. The characters are still around. They've been captured, put into a gladiatorial arena, and they must now face each other. So one character will permanently die, but most of them won't, okay? It's just incredibly interesting, right? And how you make those decisions about what you want to do. Yeah, you're programming a game as it's being played. Is that wild or what? It's just crazy to think about. It's so different than what we do in this course. Yeah, it's pretty interesting. Anyway, so you can't have nerds around a table actually fight with each other or with something or the dungeon master. So a lot of it is very stochastic. You'll be said to, hey, you need to roll a dice. And that dice roll, the outcome might be affected by your character's stats or something like that, okay? So maybe you land this blow, or maybe you don't. Maybe you manage to solve this puzzle using your special insight powers, or maybe you don't, and you have to go do something else, okay? So rolling a dice is a very, very common thing. And so the dice have kind of become a kind of a symbol of D&D. Yep, huge influence on video games, Final Fantasy, Baldur's Gate, stuff like that. No surprise. Yeah, as a DM, you have like a full-time job, okay? Maybe if you're really good, someone will pay you. This is a notebook from a DM. This is one page, and look at the crazy designs that are here. This looks like it might be kind of a layout of a really intricate, and actually this looks like pretty good drawing, actually. Lots of notes on what might happen as the player goes into these places. That sounds like a ton of work, okay? Maybe I'll stick to video games. Anyway, Dungeons & Dragons comes with a lot of rules on how combat is supposed to work, how navigation and talking with NPCs is supposed to work. But maybe the best rule of Dungeons & Dragons is that if you want to change something, you can just kind of roll with it, okay? In software, we can do a lot. We can prevent the player from reaching the cool, happy ending if we want to pretty easily. Yes, there are things they can do. They can go into RAM to hop themselves to the ending. They can cheat if they want to. So the player is always still in control, at least technically. But in Dungeons & Dragons, if Wizards of the Coast send out a rule sheet, what's that rule sheet going to do to you if you diverge? It can't do anything. It can't even make it hard. Not even in the slightest. It can't make it hard to diverge at all, okay? So wisely, they just kind of let you roll with it, and that's part of the culture, I think. You can make your own custom rules, and you can buy expansion packs and stuff that actually augment the rules of D&D to be really fun, okay? So pretty cool. I want to point out that the most commonly used scripting language, unless China has a very big D&D scene, and I don't know, do they? Is it big in China? Oh, okay, I might have gotten this wrong. Perhaps the main, most common scripting language of D&D is not English, but perhaps it is Cantonese or Mandarin or something like that. Anyway, it's pretty funny to think that D&D does have a scripting language. You do need to use your common language, though. It's not really a programming language, is it? Wait a second, or is it? Have you ever used English to get some other human to do exactly what you want? Kind of like you're programming them. Interesting to think about. Let's go ahead and move on. All right, things can get very involved. It's very cool thing. Maybe I should play it one day. And if you've not, maybe you should as well. Things are getting a bit spooky with AI, okay? But also things are getting pretty amazing. You know all about the MIT license and its fierce rival, the GPL. So in case you've forgotten the MIT license, I have a way for you to remember it in song. This is an AI.
Permission is hereby granted, free of charge, to any person obtaining a copy of this software and associated documentation files. The software to deal in the software without restriction, including without limitation the rights to use. Without warranty of any kind, express or implied, including but not limited to the warranties of merchantability, listed for a particular purpose, and non-infringement in no event shall the authors or copyright holders be liable.
Okay, I'm gonna admit I actually listened to this twice. It does not sound terrible, and if like there's gonna be some very good memes in the future, the way we're headed. Okay, so think about those and not about the more dystopian ideas. Anyway, pretty impressive stuff. What's also impressive, RPG Maker cannot be held back. It won't be confined to our laptops and PCs. It's coming to a game console near you, Nintendo Switch. You too can use your Nintendo Switch to make games now. So it's worth noting just how difficult it is to rework the UI to work on something that doesn't really have a mouse. Now the Switch, I think, does have touch, right? So that helps a lot. But pretty impressive stuff. And you have to say to yourself, the Switch market must be gigantic. Nintendo's sold a whole lot of those systems because, like, how many Switch goers really want to make games? Even if it's only a small percentage, I guess it's good enough for this team. Perhaps also they just got bored and wanted to see if they could do it. Sometimes that's what happens. All right, auto graders are now off. Well done, everyone. This is not an easy course, and standardizing your engine in the way it needs to be standardized is not an easy feat. But we've seen your engines. We've seen the footage. You've got something really good now, okay? I'm very impressed with your ability to deal with those off by one issues and a lot of the issues that come up, okay? It's game engines are exceptionally complicated, right? Synchronizing them, getting them to truly work in a standardized way. So locking that can go wrong. You've done a lot of debugging this semester, and I've only seen the debugging you do at office hours, okay? And so it's amazing stuff. Okay, but it is time to customize our engines, and that's why we're kind of moving on. That's why the auto graders are now off, and so I hope you look forward to that. Okay, discussion will not be held the next 2 weeks. Discussion is a thing of the past. The reason is that you're all kind of working on very different stuff now, and so it's kind of difficult for the discussion sections to give you good, kind of in the trenches advice on the homeworks where everyone's doing something different, okay? Also, the staff has worked super hard, and so they need a break, okay? So we're going to get them a tiny break, except for when they're presenting, which they'll be presenting today, actually. So no breaks, okay? Now you're doing my lectures for me, all right? Thank you. I appreciate it. Okay, how did the exam go? I'm very interested in your feedback. I saw a lot of feedback coming in via the extra credit feedback forms. But the thing is, a lot of that came in before you saw your grades. Okay, so I'm wondering if maybe a little bit of optimism sprinkled in there. How did it go for you? Yes.
I would just say my biggest thing was just like the language.
Yeah.
About just after like the third written problem, my brain was like fried in my hands. So so
yeah.
Like, if it was like maybe one less written, and like maybe some of the multiple choice were more difficult, like more
Sure.
involved, then
Yep.
it's less writing, less exhausting.
Yep. Logistically, I can definitely see cutting out a written response one. I think also the fact that you're writing it, and we do a lot of typing around these parts, okay? Handwriting is kind of like, oh, my brain is hurting, and my fingers are now hurting. My wrist's hurting, right? So I definitely understand. Yes?
I didn't get a chance to look at that. I thought the exam went pretty well. Biggest thing for me is the new approach. Just kind of honestly expect the whole year ran C++.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And I thought about that a little bit. In a way, this engine is all about Lua. You get to homework 7, and you get through most of homework 7. Like, Lua just brings your engine to life. It's fully customizable now. It's expressive now. Like that's when the course feels like you've made it. You've done it, right? And yet, actually, you don't write a ton of that Lua. Most of that Lua was written by me. And yes, you kind of look at it a bit, right? But until you've used that Lua API, that scripting API to really make a game with your engine, you're not that familiar with it, right? And so I'm a bit torn. You're right. We didn't give you a ton of time, and we didn't really force you to write a bunch of Lua and get used to it. But it's kind of also kind of very essential. It's also a really good way to test if you really understand your engine and how it works and how you can actually use your engine to do different cool things. Yeah, so I'm a bit torn on that one. I completely agree. Yep. Anyone else? Yes. Like the notes, like, yeah. Yeah, a part of me wonders if, like in my experience, what happens is you're allowed to write a note card. You add a ton of stuff on there that isn't relevant to the exam. And you have to write a ton of stuff. So I guess that helps you study a little bit, just writing it down. But then I never use those note cards on the actual exam. Or, I don't know, sometimes I would use the note cards as like a copy and paste job. I didn't really understand what I was doing. Like the obvious thing to write down, let's be honest, would have been AABB. Okay? A lot of you, I think, would have written that down, and that would have helped a lot in one of the questions. But at that point, I feel like kind of like I didn't really know AABB intuitively. It wasn't obvious to me. And I just kind of copied it from my note card. Another thing, though, is that I know what's on the exam, so I can kind of write that note card for you, and that's kind of what we did. Though I did leave out a couple things that I did want you to try and memorize, or at least figure out on the exam. I'm torn on that one, too. Maybe next semester we'll experiment with allowing notes. But we'll have to see. Anyone have any other thoughts or comments on the exam? You can put these in your written form if you want to, get some extra credit. You can put it on your evals, okay? Evals, final evals are out. You get extra credit for doing those. Super important. Like I cannot express enough how useful those evals are to the future of the course, okay? We can only kind of guesstimate at how things are going for you. We think we have a pretty good idea, right? We think it's going mostly okay for a lot of students. We think a few students took too long of a break in the middle of the course and maybe got wrecked when they tried to come back. And so we've got a lot of ideas. The off by 1 pixel issues, that's our priority number 1. If you have any ideas for how the course could be improved or fixed, right? Anything that we might not see, the course lives and dies by those ideas. So I really appreciate it. Please fill out your evals. If you get a chance, you get extra credit. And the course gets a lot better for people following in your footsteps, okay? In a very real sense, as the first people to take this course, you are part of the authoring team, right? A part of you is in this course. The suggestions you make, the problems you run into, okay, will affect the course forever. So this is another way for you to know I really appreciate you doing this first course, okay? Risky thing to do. Not easy. The course will never be this hard again, okay? This is game engine architecture in hard mode. You might meet people in the industry later who did this course, but you'll never meet people who've done it on hard mode like you did. Maybe I'll give you unique stickers, okay, that say 498 hard mode, okay? Anyway, it was fun to design. It was very much like designing a game, but it took a long time. So hopefully I can reuse some parts of this exam next year. We'll have to see. On Wednesday, we have Stardock coming, Nathan Hanish, okay? I'll be totally honest with you. I want a packed room, okay? And I'm willing to give you some extra credit to do it, all right? Nathan has been a tremendous asset to game dev at Michigan for a long time. That guy has helped generate a lot of opportunities for our students. He might do that for you, okay? And he's a really wonderful person. He's given his extremely valuable time. He's one of the top devs at Stardock. He's going to come in. He's going to talk to us about coding style. He's going to talk to us about C++ and a lot of the ways you can get blown up. he's going to come in, he's going to make me look kind of bad, okay? Because some of the things I do a lot of are not things he wants you doing, okay, at Stardock. So he's going to explain why some of the coding techniques I use are maybe not the best. And then after he leaves, I've got a few lectures to explain to you why he might not be entirely correct. We'll see, okay? I'm a little bit addicted to my static functions, okay? That's all I'm going to say. But a lot of people are very suspicious of static stuff. It just makes the code look so beautiful. Anyway, it's really easy to call static stuff. That's why I use it a lot. But it can get you into trouble. And for some teams, they've decided that is not worth it. Anyway, on Wednesday, get a tiny bit of extra credit. Not a ton, but a tiny bit, okay, for being there. I'm going to have a QR code available and everything. Maybe you can use the QR code if you're watching on Twitch at real time. But if you can get here in person, I do appreciate that a lot, okay? FFmpeg 7 was released, okay? This is not super exciting, but it is a good occasion to talk about the autograder and why third-party dependencies are not free. When you grab a new piece of software from a third party, that software will continue to move forward in the background. It will get new features, it will get new bug fixes, it will also break things. Okay, here's my quick story. One of the big pain points on the autograder is that it uses a very complex filter to quickly create the stacked video, where one's on the top, the instructor solution video on the bottom, and the frames on the bottom, okay? That's actually a fairly complex thing to do. And it only works, I kid you not, it only works on FFmpeg version 6.0. Don't you dare upgrade to the hot patch 6.1, okay? Or you're toast, okay? I accidentally did that, and now none of my videos are working, okay? Anyway, software is living and breathing, okay? You'd think you've got this executable, it's going to work forever. It will not. The operating system it sits on will advance. The compiler used to generate its source code will advance, get new features, and deprecate others, okay? I was talking with Ravi the other day about how difficult it can be to compile Doom. You go read the GitHub, because they open sourced it. You go read John Carmack's little message. He says, hey, this is super portable, like C code. You should be able to just build it with any compiler. No, you can't. No, you can't. It takes a long time to figure that out. And I've burned a ton of hours, never been able to successfully do it. Compilers have moved on. Certain things that used to be just totally fine and standard are no longer are, okay? And you can't compile it easily. So that's the thing to keep in mind and take away. Every time you take on a dependency, every time you use a feature, keep in mind that feature might not be around forever. That dependency might move on. The dependency could break. It might become unavailable, okay? And so this might feel like a very technical job. It is not. It is also a very social job, okay? There's no getting away from this. And the moment you join a big industry or graduate school research team, you will feel this, okay? And you'll understand, all right? And I guess this gets back to what we said earlier. It's not just about programming machines. You need to get very good at programming other people, communicating with them, and getting to a point where you can work together well, okay? All right, I know you can do it. I've talked with so many of you. You're awesome, okay? You got no problems. All right, extra credit, course evals. Yep, I already told you about that. We really appreciate it, team. Same as in 494, same as in EECS 440. It really matters, especially in this first semester. So please fill that out if you can. Please remember to do it as soon as you can so you don't forget. Let us know your ideas, and I can't wait to read them. Thank you. Okay. All right. So we got a new assignment. It's a new era, okay? How many of you have other courses that are pretty tough courses? You want to work on them? You want to focus on them? Okay. Well, guess what? You could do that, all right? You can do that now if you want to. You don't have to worry too much. This is going to be the next 2 weeks. It's not going to be super difficult. It's not going to be super heavy, okay? This course has been very heavy, all right? And now, if you want to, you can kind of take a break. Now, if you don't want to, if you really have an ambitious idea for your game engine, you can do that too. Because We are now on to the custom feature, okay? Kind of like in 494, the end of that course, kind of like in EECS 440, you're going to spend a week building something new, fresh, custom, okay? Hopefully it'll be different from most of your peers, but you know, if someone decides to do kind of the same thing, it's not the end of the world, okay? Game engines, what's really interesting is that everyone thinks about the very popular, very general purpose. Unity, Unreal, Game Maker. Okay, you can do all sorts of stuff with those engines. But there are actually a lot of technical ecosystems and engines and frameworks out there that are kind of small. Well, why would you want to use them? Well, they do something really, really, really well. You just did Game Engine of the Day, right, on the exam. Adobe Flash, not a great general purpose choice, I'm going to be honest with you, but super good if you want to make an internet-based, integrated animation that's a bit interactive. Perfect for that. You wouldn't want to choose Game Maker for that, okay? You could, it wouldn't be optimal, all right? We can see here, these two engines on the left, Xperio, on the right, we have Rav Engine, and both of these were kind of made not to take over the world, but they were made for a specific bespoke purpose, right? Educational, right? Or to test some things. Nikhil, why did you make Xperio?
Because I was bored during COVID.
You were bored during COVID. You wanted to have your own engine. Is there anything you focused on in particular on that engine?
I really wanted to do C++ scripting, as a scripting language.
Okay. Interpreted C++?
Like compile C++ and then relinked into your project as a DLL.
Oh.
It involves security hacks that are outright dangerous.
So wait, explain why you wanted to try that, because that's actually really cool. Explain to everyone.
Largely because I was curious about why no engine had any type of C++ scripting except for Unreal. I didn't want to see if it was actually possible. So
the idea was you don't want to recompile your entire project. You make some changes to your C++ source code. How do you link that into a program while it's still running? Well, you already know about the dynamic linker, right? So often at some studios, I think Unreal even does this, you can hot patch that C++ code in. Basically, compile that new C++, turn it into a DLL, and then you could use the dynamic linker to load that code in the form of a DLL into your running program so that your engine can reload C++ without doing another big engine-wide compile. That's pretty awesome, isn't it? And that might not sound like a big deal. How long does it take to compile your engines these days from scratch? Anyone know?
About a minute and a half.
Oh, a minute and a half? Oh, that's getting up there. Yeah, the autograder will kill your compile after 60 seconds. I think I bumped that up to 2 minutes, but that's getting a bit close. On The Sims 4, 40-minute compile. Okay, 40 minutes. This is starting to become really important that we find some way to hot patch logic in so that our iteration keeps tight, right? Ravi, why did you initially create your engine? And what do you use it for mainly today?
I started because I don't like Unity.
Don't like Unity?
I don't like using it. Don't like Unreal. Don't like using that either. I wanted something basic that I could have things I wanted.
What were the things you wanted?
I want to have 3D capabilities, but I didn't need as much as what Unreal was giving. And I wanted it to be. I wanted to have real tooling support. So I wanted to just grab random profile off the shelf like these and have this work, or use a real graphics card off the shelf instead of using the one that's built in. Unity. Yep. And so I just kind of built it around those stuff. I don't care about 3D at all, so it has no 2D capabilities whatsoever. It's just not a use case I'm interested in supporting.
One really cool thing that Ravi has done a few times with this engine is that he integrates new graphics APIs and updates really quickly. And Ravi keeps telling me about finding low-level driver bugs, right?
Yeah, I found a crasher AMD driver a little bit back where I was violating some kind of security in the driver that would cause, if you ran it on Windows and some AMD GPUs, it would actually corrupt your desktop. you start to see DWM textures, which
Yeah.
you're not supposed to be able to see.
Yeah.
And your process is not supposed to be able to write that information.
Yep.
I tried reporting it to AMD, but the submit button on their form didn't work. So I just did.
Wow, that's brutal. But like, you know, if you're going to end up at a company like Apple, right? That's where Ravi's headed. This is perfect, right? Help you find driver issues, help you test new technologies in a kind of minimalistic, right, clean way. It's just fantastic. This is to say that people create engines for their own unique purposes all the time. And you can do that too, okay? You don't need to have the best general purpose engine. You don't need to go fight Unity or fight Godot even. You just need to find a niche, and you need to serve that niche as best as possible, right? That's actually a great rule for entrepreneurship and business. When you're starting out, don't go fight EA, okay? Don't go fight Activision, right? Go find a small niche, the, the PlayStation 1 romance horror community. That might only have 1,000 people in the world in it. But if you're making games for that niche, they will love you forever, okay? You're all they've got. And what you'll often find is that those niche products actually command a pretty high price because that's all you got, okay? And so you can often expand from there. All right, this is a long-winded way to say, I think you're going to have fun with this, okay? Now, I've listed a bunch of custom features that you can kind of pull off the shelf if you want to. These are kind of sorted in like the order of easiest, I think, lightweight, most lightweight to hardest, except not really. Okay, so one thing you could do is you could say, you know what? Unity has this beautiful visual editor that makes it so easy to build your scenes, unless you're Ravi, okay? And what you can do is you can say, I want something like that. You don't have enough time. You only have 2 weeks. So don't build your own editor unless you're really, really ambitious. Go grab an open source tool like Tiled, which you can just kind of pull right off the shelf. And you can even get the source code and customize it, okay? Tiled is a map editor that allows you to import image sets, sprite tile sets, and then quickly draw maps. And it allows you to put objects in, and it allows you to give those objects and tile sets properties, okay? So you can kind of customize, oh, I want this object to be solid, so it blocks the character and all that. Well, it exports all of that information to CSV files or XML files or even JSON files. Imagine that, okay? And so why not build a little tool for importing maps from Tiled? Now, you basically do have a front end for your engine if you want it, okay? That's pretty cool. You can do the classic things I've already been talking about. We don't have controller support, okay? This might be one of the easier things to do if you just want to kind of quickly get the course over with. I wouldn't blame you. It's been a tough semester, you know? And then maybe you can do something more over the summer if you want to. But controller support. So let's get Xbox working. Let's get PlayStation working, okay? You can grab one of these ideas off the shelf, or you can come up with your own. Regardless of what you do, at the end of this week on Monday, you will turn in to Canvas a video. That video must demonstrate thoroughly your progress, and it also needs to have you doing a voiceover to kind of explain what you're showing us, okay? It needs to be clear. It needs to demonstrate some significant effort toward the final result. Yeah, you need to tell us what you're going to do for the next week, okay, to finish up, all right? Make it the kind of video that you could post on your website, your portfolio site, okay? That's going to get you the most value here, all right? Showing off what your engine can do. If you implement controls, right, get us some 3D footage from your camera, right? Show the screen reacting as you use the joystick. Show us the Lua APIs, the new APIs you designed that allow a game designer to actually script and get data from the joysticks, okay? Stuff like that. Show us multiple controllers doing the thing, all right? Not just one controller type, but multiple, okay? You got a DDR dance pad? Do that, all right? That's kind of what we're looking for. And this isn't going to be graded super harshly, okay? But we want to see evidence of a good 7 hours or so of work, at least an hour a day, okay? All right. So hopefully that won't be too bad. You got other ideas in here, exotic platform targets, so HTML5 maybe. You've got stuff like Android maybe, which might be really interesting. Compressing the JSON files so you can load them faster could be really cool as well. Kind of a build step, right? You've got your game working. Now let's click the build button or run the build command. It's going to compress everything, and now performance has doubled, okay? That could be pretty cool. And we got lots of other stuff in here as well. UI stuff, audio middleware stuff, hot reloading, multi-threading, if you're ambitious, and this is the one that Nathan Hainish is going to really, really love if you do. Just trying to get some multi-threading support in there, okay? Find out if you can take your engine and maybe separate the rendering from the physics or the logic a little bit, okay? Get some speed up there. If you're really ambitious, you might do some of these ones at the back. You might add an additional scripting language. Now, this sounds very difficult to me, but wouldn't it be awesome if you had like a little bit of C# running? Okay? Alongside Lua, alongside C++. Oh my goodness. Okay? So for these harder ones, we're really kind of grading based on effort and demonstrated time investment. If you're doing a new programming language, we might not expect you to replicate every API, okay, over from Lua. If we see some stuff running and we got a pretty cool result, you're probably going to get those points. If we're a bit disappointed, you might lose a little bit. And if it's clear you didn't really do anything, or your engine isn't at a place where you can do anything, not going to get many points, okay? You will get feedback. We'll clarify what we want you to do for the second week. And if we think you're moving fast enough, you're doing enough work, you're demonstrating it well. But this is going to be a little bit of a mushier assignment compared to the auto-graded ones, okay? We'll grade it fairly lightly. If you're putting in the effort, I think it's going to be pretty obvious. But we do expect an effort, okay? Not a gigantic one. You can focus on other courses now. But 3D is the big one. This is terrifying to me. I think you could probably do it, but you're going to want to keep it very basic if you go this route, okay? More likely, maybe next semester you can take the new 3D graphics course. I'm sure that's going to be awesome. And maybe then you can add 3D support to your engine, and you'll win some game jam down the line, and you'll get to do it with your very own engine. How cool would that be? Okay? You can come up with a custom idea. I highly recommend that you DM us. You DM me, you DM the staff, and ask, does this sound right? Okay? What would you be looking for that would probably be enough effort to get full points? Okay? Ask about that stuff. Otherwise, you're kind of taking a bit of a risk. All right? Okay. You can consider third-party libraries now. You're not locked down anymore to just the stuff on the assignment specs. You can get rid of Lua Bridge for Sol if you want to, right? And that went pretty well, right?
Yeah, it actually was really fun, and it smoothed than I thought. I won't say that it boosted the performance wildly or anything.
Yeah.
But it's a really interesting API to use. I like it.
I was surprised you had time for that. How did you find the time?
Well, I've been researching it for the past month. So
okay.
As soon as I finished homeworking, I was
Let's go.
There, yeah.
That's just music to my ears. I see exhibition stuff in the exhibition channel. Students working on their own game engines for fun. And I'm like, that was literally what I wanted to accomplish. Okay? I know maybe some of you will finish the course, get those credits, graduate, and then throw this engine, get this thing out of here. Okay? This thing's nasty. But hopefully, you might have some fun messing around with it. See if you can bolt a cool library on. Who knows? Maybe you can try and get some generative AI in here or something. And just keep learning, keep doing cool stuff, okay? It's the kind of thing that really impresses. The moment anyone sees the RAV engine, and I'll tell you, people think, who is this guy? He's got his own awesome engine. Are you kidding me? Oh my goodness, Xperio, right? That's the kind of thing that can really help you out. Not just from a passion and emotional way, in a learning way, but it's really good for your portfolio, okay? Anyway, create a basic technical demonstration in 1 week, okay? This doesn't need to have a ton of features. Get something that you can show off, okay? And you're welcome to show us a bit of what you did under the hood if maybe things aren't quite working yet, all right? That's how it goes. Sometimes you put in a week's worth of really good effort, and it's like, I was really just refactoring stuff and getting ready for the big thing, right? Anyway, do the best you can. Again, I don't anticipate this being graded super harshly. If the effort is there, I think it's going to be pretty obvious. And if the effort's there, the points are going to be there too, okay? And we're not asking for crazy effort. Does anyone have any questions? Use something like OBS to record your footage. You don't have to make a super polished thing, but you make it look good enough. Keep it on your portfolio. People will love it, okay? Any questions or comments? Yes? No. No, you can just go with your favorite platform now. I will say it would be a little bit sad to put in so much effort to make it multi-platform, and then in the last 2 weeks it goes back to Windows only. That's kind of like, what was the point? But, you know, that's not important. We're not going to grade that at all. Any other questions? Yes?
So it's a little unrelated, but is there any talk about like errors of I don't know if you can make a decision on whether or not like the publicity of our source code after?
Oh, yes. Okay, so the question is about, can we publish our source code for our engine? And that would be really nice, right? That's great for portfolios. And who knows, maybe one day your engine is actually blowing up because you added a super cool feature and now people are using it. A niche community uses it. Now everyone uses it. It's a little bit spooky because we're not super excited to have solution code out there floating around the internet. The fact is, though, if you said, hey, you've got this student's homework 8 solution here, I kind of look at that and be like, I can't really use that for homework 3 or 4 or 5. And using it for homework 6 or 7, it's got to be a real pain. Might as well just make my own at that point. So I think the answer is going to be yes with an asterisk. I think at the end of the semester, we're going to let you basically move all of your code over in the form of an initial commit without history. Okay? So you'll be able to take your engine, create a GitHub or a public repo, and we're going to be totally fine with it so long as you don't bring over all the history. Okay? That's a really good compromise, I think, and then you can go do your thing and you can create new history, and your old history will sit in the GitLab for a while with me. Okay? So that's what I think we're going to do. Okay? Any other questions? Yeah, that's a good one. All right. Good. Very good. Okay? I'm super excited. I can't wait. Okay? I've been waiting for this moment for probably about a year. All right? And now I just can't wait to see what you do. Okay? And no, I'm not going to feel bad if you just do controller stuff. I get it. Okay? You don't have to feel bad about that. Okay? Just a tiny bit. All right. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to hand the mic over to Nikhil, who has been itching to talk to you about some topics all semester. One of those, UX in games and game engines. And so we'll hand it over to Nikhil. We're going to have a lot of interesting topics, but high level, in these final couple weeks. Ravi's going to have a great one. Starduck's going to have a great one. I'm going to take you into the guts of Godot in a week or so. By the way, if you're wondering about the exam review, like you want to see the solutions, do you want to see the answer key for the exam? We're going to do that Monday. Okay? So look forward to that. And should be fun. All right, Nikhil, let's rock and roll. Thank you for doing this.
All right, awesome. Yeah. All right, awesome. So I do want to talk a bit about UI and game engines. So I'll load eventually. But so I've had an internship at Iron Galaxy for the past couple summers. Summer of 2022, I was in Nashville working on UI, specifically like main menu bugs for a battle royale called Rumbleverse. That didn't do so well because, monetizing these things is hard, but
You
it's
can
not going to
scroll
work.
through just the editor view if you want.
Okay. Oh wow, you're right. I can. So yeah, and then this year I worked on the Killer Instinct Anniversary Edition. That was basically it's been 10 years since a game called Killer Instinct launched. Killer Instinct is basically Mortal Kombat, but there's a reptile in it. And yeah, just doing stuff with multiplayer, networking, and kind of delving into the UI of those games. So yeah, I'm going to talk to you a bit about what it's like for proprietary game engines and with the standard game engines. So in the course game engine, you have two basic functions. You have text rendering and you have screen space images. You have two functions, text draw, and then image draw UI X. And that's basically what you need to get a game engine creating a lot of the UI that you need. But can they really provide all of it? So that's kind of an interesting thing. So I've worked quite a bit on these two. Rumble versus up top, it's Battle Royale. It has a pretty complicated main menu. And then there's Killer Instinct. It's a fighting game. It has fairly in-depth networking that I was working on. So yeah, I got to dive quite in depth. So there is a lot of stuff that's going on in a game UI. Pick The Witcher 3 because it's a fairly complex RPG. Like there's a lot of stuff. There's there's buttons. Was it gonna work?
It's just really bad right now.
Okay.
There you go. This is a little bit better.
Okay. Yeah, I think that you can see it better.
Yeah.
Oh wow. We got animations. Nice. So yeah, can you all see these screens back there? Okay, nice. So yeah, what do you notice about like what types of features and functionalities a screen like this has? Yep.
It's got like a mix of a 3D scene with a bunch of 2D controls.
Yeah, that's kind of the big one. There's 3D backgrounds and there's 2D images laid out on it. There's buttons. There's also control prompts. They have to change and wrap text. A lot of interesting stuff. Yeah, what about this one now? It's not really 3D stuff. There's still a lot of complicated stuff on it. Yeah?
So this is like a 2D thing, but it's just going to mess with the game's internals, how it's displayed to the user, I guess.
Yeah, displaying a lot of the game's internal settings to the users. So, yeah, you have a system of all different tabs, buttons. Each one of these options has to have a slider. It's got to be hooked up to an option in the game. That game option has to work and actually do stuff. And, yeah, lots of components. This is a really complicated one. But, yeah, there's lots of interactive elements here. Yeah, what's kind of one of the interactive elements you see? Yeah? Yeah, there's buttons, there's tabs of buttons, there's those buttons are toggleable, they have different icons, also a progress bar, which is pretty neat for them. Yeah, this mini map we're not even going to get into, but yeah, this is also a fairly technical thing to implement. So you need a lot of stuff in order to implement a UI. Like the UI of even just one game is pretty complex, and it is. Oh man, we don't get the gifts. This is this is the bunny falling over. So yeah, there's a lot of things that go into a game UI, and there's a lot of people that need to work on it. There is middle buttons for the middle button. Okay, so UI programmers, they program the systems of the game UI, how the rest of people interface with it. There's a UI UX designer. They're specifically creating designs, and you ever use Figma, that's primarily what UI UX designer does. Then there's the UI artists. They take those Figma designs with pretty rough blocking and make it actually look nice. There's also UX researchers, at least on our team there was. They conduct and analyze surveys, they do play tests, and they give a lot of feedback on how to improve user interfaces. There's also technical designers. They usually work all over the place with a game, but they do also supervise the UI UX designer and any in-engine work. And you also have to have a producer to help manage scoping, tasks, things like that. It's a lot of stuff. So, yeah, of these, like the roles indicated in red need to be in engine. UI UX researcher and producer generally don't. That's that's at least 4 people. On a UI team, it can go as high as 10 or even 20 people that are in engine all at once. So you need something a bit more complex than that Lua API. And so since so many people contribute to it, we need to make sure our UI systems are very extensible. To need to accommodate all those people who may not be good at C++ or want to use C++. And yeah, so there's a concept in game engines that we've talked about called, oh man, my slide is clipped. There we go. Called extensibility. The basic idea is like there's 2 ends of the spectrum. There's being pretty rigid, and then there's being pretty extensible. So, like, yeah, your homework 3, for instance, that's very rigid. Homework 3 is the first C++ one. Like, you can't really do anything with it. Like, it's only meant for one game. You can't really change the content. In homework 4 and homework 5, you get access to those scene files, and those help a lot. In homework 5, you can change the visuals. So it makes it somewhat extensible, but not a ton. Homework 6 is basically the exact same, but with collisions. And then homework 7, you get to being very extensible over time. So as we put in more work, things get pretty extensible. And yeah, like, it is better to be extensible generally, but rigid engines have some benefits. One thing, they are easier to program, the static engine than a rigid engine. Like, we ask you to make a standard text adventure game rather than the engine for a reason. Yeah?
Like, if you look at the average grades through the assignments, like homework 3, everyone just knocked it out of the park. And then, like, every assignment after that, like, oh, jeez. And then suddenly only a handful of people are truly, fully finishing homework 8. Like, things got more extensible, and as they did, things got tougher.
Yeah. You suddenly have to deal with content that you didn't create. Like, with rigid engines, you are not prone to bugs because of bad content, because you made all the content. And they can be more performant because you're not loading things in. You are not having to parse data formats, give errors, things like that. Extensible engines, meanwhile, they do require a bit of scripting and as integration, but they have a big advantage, which is that they enable less technical team members to work in engine, to create content. Austin has shared stories with us about how the Sims 4 team had pretty long iteration times and not a ton of fast iteration could really be done on those. The more extensible you can make it, faster iteration you have. So we add extensibility in a few ways. For one thing, having a scripting language, like what we did with Lua, but there was also C#, JavaScript. People have created their own. That's a way to make something extensible. If you just have your data formats as text-based and easily editable, that can make things pretty extensible. And editor tools are pretty complex, but they do work in allowing people to edit your content, edit your systems, things like that. And you generally need different parts to be different levels of extensible. Like you need your rendering to be somewhat extensible, but it's you don't need a designer to have full control of the pipeline or anything like that. At least if you're making your own proprietary engine. Your gameplay, completely up to you. But a lot of teams that do have proprietary engines they make do not make the gameplay extensible at all and just make it for one genre and then it's done. Your levels, you might want logic in your levels. You definitely need ways for people to block out levels, so that needs a lot more extensibility. And UI need to be pretty extensible for what we're going to talk about in a bit, because, oh man, that's a really cool GIF. Actually, I think I can pull it up here.
Yeah, I think it will run.
Okay, yeah, like this is the Persona UI. The UI designers went all out for this one, and UI designers, want to make things as motiony and cool as possible. Yeah.
That's a really cool animation. Do you think it's as cool, like the 10,000th time you've seen it?
I don't know. Like first time, I'm like, wow, but after that, like, it feels kind of cool, but I don't notice it as
It's
much.
a bit slow, I noticed.
It's partially because the GIF is slow, but otherwise, yeah. Persona 5 in particular does something really cool, which is that you can control the cursor before the animation is done playing.
Oh, cool! Wow.
Yeah. So sometimes, like, you don't have to wait at all. Yeah. Somebody else has a question? Yeah.
This reminds me of like if you've ever played Super Mario 64.
Yeah.
How there's like the little Easter eggs you can do with the UI. That's when you mentioned it back there. But
Yeah.
I don't know, pretty crazy UI.
Yeah. UI designers want to make cool stuff. They want to have a lot of control that maybe their programmers didn't intend. So, yeah, that's basically, you want your game engines to have extensible UI, HUDs, menus. You want to have quick iteration times, things like that. And the commercial game engines do that. So game engines like Unreal, Godot, Unity, they have editors for your UI. These are some screenshots I've been able to get just from studio games. You can make them with as complex hierarchies as you want. You can drag stuff out. There's gizmos. I can click on any of those 4 buttons, drag it out, and get the thing that I want. And I can edit the anchoring, transform, rotation, basically anything I want, any element I can do it visually. Game engine companies have the incentive to provide this experience and the resources because, they spend all their time making the engine and they want the good developer experience so that they keep coming, keep making games. But proprietary engines, especially ones that a company makes internally, they can't really make those types of tools. At the very least, it would cost them too much that they might look for other options. So game engines use a lot of things to do it. And the most common one is Adobe Flash. So we talked about it before. Yeah, in scale form. Flash is a game engine, but it's also an animation tool. In the early 2000s, it was very popular for animations. It had everything you need. We show some tools here, like the I don't know what all those are, but they are pretty useful. There's tons of tutorials. The timeline view makes it really easy to navigate and edit. Flash overall is pretty good for animations. And the UI people and the UI designers in particular said, we want our UI tools to be like Flash. And making something that's like Flash is a non-zero amount of effort. So the programmers just said, why don't we just make our tools to be Flash? And that's when something called Scaleform came in. I cannot find the logo for this thing, but I know that it had one. Scaleform has been used in a ton of stuff. It's used in Killer Instinct, but it's also used in a lot of other AAA
It was
games.
on The Sims 4 too.
Yeah. Sims 4, yeah. Basically anything from the 2000s or early 2010s that had a custom engine often used Scaleform. Scaleform was pretty cool. You can see a demo here. It's this is without the gameplay underneath. It's just rendering a Flash movie. Do we have video of it? Okay, I do have video of what it's capable of. Where is that? Oh man, it can't load my.
Refresh the page because it only got to slide 34.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm past that.
Refresh the page. It's going further.
Okay. I think we might be able to get. Just short. Okay. Well, I guess I won't be able to show you the
Refresh
video.
again.
Oh.
You know, Google trolled us like this early in the semester. You remember that?
Yeah.
Oh, goodness. Wow.
Yeah, you can make some cool stuff. This was not a commercial game, by the way. This is somebody's just school project. But like, yeah, you know, engine programmers do not want to program this, but yeah, let's see. You can make keyboards. Yeah, all sorts of cool stuff. I have no idea what the Persona 5 UI was made in, but like this is a reasonable way to make it. Yeah, Scaleform could even play videos inside of videos. It all just kind of, yeah, it all mostly worked. Yeah.
Like, you get the impression that Adobe had no idea what they had in Flash.
Yeah.
To just let it die.
Yeah. It's unfortunate because it was a really good tool. It was industry leading.
Well, it still exists, but it's not just for like TV.
Yeah, like I can't believe they got rid of Flash Web Player. That
was in the 90s,
but yeah. So yeah, you often want a scripting language to make something extensible. Scaleform and Adobe Flash had it. This is called ActionScript. I'm still getting used to this thing, but yeah, it's not that dissimilar to Lua. It even has static typing, which is pretty nice. Scaleform has integrations with the ActionScript scripting language. It can actually invoke scripting methods, which can be really nice. Kind of like what we did in Lua. Like those two pieces of code syntactically are very different, but conceptually not really that different. So yeah, you may be wondering if Scaleform can be used in your engine today, and kind of like Adobe Flash, the answer is not really. Like Scaleform websites, basically, Autodesk was the creator of Scaleform. They took it down because they didn't want to maintain that thing, and also like it was dying because Unity and Unreal had launched their newest version of the engine, newest licensing models in 2014, and that a lot of companies were switching off of that. IMGUI and other things like that kind of killed any real want for Scaleform. So it is just used. It's used a lot by porting houses. Like porting houses know it, but aside from that, there isn't a ton of reason to know Scaleform today. Yeah, Unreal and Unity have basically everything you need for UI. Yeah, but Scaleform and Flash did really well because it had tools, had a familiar user interface, it had an embedded scripting language that designers could use, and it had an easy-ish integration into a proprietary engine. Like, easy enough that most proprietary engines of the era use Scaleform. It's pretty cool to know that Flash was used for game engine UIs and things like that. I have delved a bit into it. It is a pain, and since Scaleform is no longer being updated or being maintained, if you want a game that ran on Scaleform to run on a modern console or modern graphics API, you got to write that port yourself. So, yeah. So I think that's it for me. Anybody have any questions, comments? Otherwise, just hand it off to Austin.
All right, Nikhil. Thank you. Yeah, so I suppose just another punch in the gut for me. Who grew up using Flash, really enjoyed it. Was my second game dev ecosystem after GameMaker, and yeah, it was just that impactful. Really, really good stuff. And I think it also gets to this idea. It's kind of interesting. Often we think of programmers as being very different from artists. But in this scene, you weren't a programmer or an artist. You were a game dev. And that meant that you would spend 5 minutes drawing some cool vector art thing up. And then you spend the next 5 minutes giving it a cool little walking animation, very simple. And then you spend the next 5 minutes programming so that it actually moved when you held the right arrow key down and left arrow key, it flips and goes the other way. And so you never really felt like this was kind of a different, disparate thing, right? It was just all one kind of combined effort to make cool art and cool games. So I've often kind of thought that, like, well, hey, that cool game dev over there, that game dev over there, like knows some programming, but yeah, she doesn't really feel like a programmer entirely, right? They're a great artist, but they don't really feel like an artist, right? Being a game dev is about being good at many different things. And so a tool like Flash was just a perfect fit. Unity, the most popular engines today just they don't quite scratch that itch, okay? Maybe there's still time. Maybe someone's going to come up with the big Flash replacement. It's going to be a big renaissance when old nerds like me sprint to it, okay? Maybe there's an opportunity there. Who knows? Maybe a UbiArt could have been that, but then they got kind of thrown into the pit with by Ubisoft. I guess Rayman didn't sell that well. I don't think Rayman has ever sold that well. Anyway, that is kind of, I think, almost everything I wanted to talk to you about today. Does anyone have any comments or questions about anything in the course or on these topics? I was talking with Raul earlier, and it struck us that there were so many people. I think we were talking about this. There were so many people at the exam. I got to see their faces. It was really great. But I'm just going to assume that you're watching the Twitch stream, all of you, from home, and know that we're thinking about you too, okay? Even if you're not quite here in person. If any of you want to come up and get your exam, I'm going to be here for the next 2 hours. It's office hours. And after that, I'll be bringing these exams to pretty much all these events, all these lectures, all these office hours for the next couple of weeks, okay? So these are physical copies. We do not have a digital version of them. So you will need to come find me if you want to get your exam copy, okay? And I do recommend it. A lot of interesting mistakes were made on many of the solutions, but not crazy ones. Mistakes that will have some educational value when you read my notes. I did write notes, and that's part of why it took forever to grade these things. Okay, so on Monday we're going to have a big one. We're going to go through some of the harder questions. I'm going to talk to you about common mistakes that were made and funny things that students did that sometimes worked, sometimes didn't. On Wednesday, Nathan Hainish is going to be here. Don't let extra credit slip by. Okay, if you're at all nervous about your grade, then you might want to take your chances so long as you got them. So thank you all so much for coming today. It was super good to see you. We will see you next time. Thank you for tuning in, and go blue. All right, bye bye.